Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 147th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Which reminds me of a saying that I heard this week, and I'd heard it before, but it's worth repeating, that a mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. Today, our panel will discuss issues they think will be important in the 2020 presidential campaigns, or the issues they would like to see have a complete and open airing. Today's panel, beginning on my left, is Patty Haskins, member of the Wadsworth City Council. On her left is Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. On his left is Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, a retired senior research chemist. And on his left, for the second or third time on our panel, is Tom Finley. He's the retired VP of Human Resources Development at Rubbermaid and co-founder of the Great Lakes Resource Center. Patty, could you give us your choice of issues that you would like to see given a complete airing in the campaign?
Personally, the issues that I would like to see aired are education and promotion of public schools instead of the drive towards private schools and putting the money there. I think it's important to keep our public education system sound, and the Department of Education needs to do more to keep it that way. I would also like to see issues about the EPA and standards that they are setting.
Can I interrupt you for just a moment?
Yes.
Are you in favor of a federal Department of Education?
Yes.
Started during the Carter years.
Yes, I have no problem with that.
Because they give good guidance on how to run the schools, or because they provide money?
Both.
Okay.
And I think that you need, the main reason though, is because they can provide national standards, which you need. You shouldn't have inferior education just simply because you move from one state to another. So when left only in the state's hands, you see a great disparity between the level of education that's offered between states, and also the money that is supplied to provide education for students.
Okay.
But that
for this topic, I'm glad Tom's at the other end of the panel here, because I'm sure he's got a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
But he's not going to bring it up.
well,
He'll forget about it by the time we get down to it.
but as I was saying, I think also that the EPA and a lot of the protections that have been removed need to be brought back. I think that climate change is a huge issue that needs to be discussed, and we need to, instead of moving away from and backing out of agreements on climate change, we need to be moving forward and trying to work to at least combat the changes that we might see in the future, because it presently is going the opposite direction. Are those the main issues I think that are going to be discussed? No, I don't. I think economy is going to always be the first and number one in most people's hearts. Who said is the economy stupid? Because
Jim Carville.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
People look in their pocket and they see how they're doing, and they tend to vote more on how things affect them, not in global and overall things that work. I think immigration is going to be a big topic, because it has been, and it's going to be brought up by President Trump, of course. I think healthcare could be a big issue. Another issue that I might think can be brought up, might be and should be brought up, I think, is the trade issues that we are having right now, the trade war with China, and some of our political problems that we're having where that is concerned, along, of course, with influence in education, in the elections. But again, I think it's going to boil down to economy and immigration. And the other thing that when I was thinking about this over the week that I thought was interesting is, unfortunately, I think that a lot of people do not vote on an issue. People tend to come out to vote and be stronger in their opinions when they are opposed to something. And they tend to vote for the negative. For example, sitting on council, if we have an issue that is coming up, people don't show up at council meetings to voice their approval of what we're doing, or we're in agreement with what you're doing. What they show up at council for is when they are opposed to what we are doing. if you look at the campaign that President Trump ran, a great deal of his campaign was based upon vote for me. What else have, and he said, what else have you got to lose?
To the black
Yeah,
population.
to the black population.
Yeah.
He told people, vote for me because otherwise you're going to get Hillary and she should be in jail. So don't vote for her. I really think a lot of people are going to come out and vote for the Democrat this time and are going to be more motivated to get up and go out and vote, or at least fill out an absentee ballot, because they're opposed to President Trump.
George Will called him this week. He says people just want someone to get in there and take down the tents of that circus that's going on in the White House.
Exactly, and I think that's going to be, very, very high motivation. I mean, I hear people from the Trump side when you listen to, like Fox does these. I hate them, but these cafe things where they go for breakfast and the reporter goes around. What do you like about President Trump?
Yeah.
Well, he's great for the economy and he keeps me safe.
Yeah.
And
I
he's
got
not,
this hat.
and I got this hat, and he's not Hillary Clinton, and he's opposed to this. People are talking about what they are opposed to, not what they are in favor of, and that's unfortunate because we should be talking about issues.
Speaking of Fox, I heard somebody on CNN ask Beto O'Rourke, what question should we be asking you to make you look good? Anyway, Bryan, where are you on this topic?
Well, Patty had my top two. I think the economy and immigration. I think those are two of the issues that really people look at. One, it's the feel good. The economy is going really well. People have more money in their pocket. Consumer confidence is up. You just take your own little survey. There are more help wanted signs out and about our little city. Mm-hmm. If you want to work, there's a job out there for you. Now, it might not be the job or a career, but it's at least a start.
Yes.
And I think that's what a lot of the folks forget about when they start going with the 15 for all and all that kind of stuff. So the economy, I think, is going to be on really sure footing. I think that plays really strongly into the election. Immigration has been a problem for a long time, and we just can't put this at the feet of the current administration. And I've said this before, I'm no fan of the current occupant, but the fact of the matter is he's hitting some areas that need to be hit. We've had these issues 8 years. A lot of the pictures that you see that the media puts out about kids in cages and behind chain link fences and everything, those were during the Obama administration as well as the Bush administration. I mean, it's a problem that has just nagged at the country for many years. And if you don't live in a border state, you really don't understand how it affects you. We get a little bit of it here, not a lot. But that is an issue that needs to be solved, however it gets solved. I'm all for people coming here through the front door. And there's a variety of ways for people to come here. And I think, we forget about that when, the media throws some, a very sad story and it tugs at your heartstrings. But there are solutions if we can just get both sides to come together and say, this is a happy medium here. Don't
you think, though, that it would be almost impossible to design a system to process all the people who want to come here legally, process them legally? Hundreds of thousands, millions of people. Could we even put together an infrastructure to manage that?
I think the resources of the country and the brain power that we have, there's a solution to it. I really do. I think we're just sort of nibbling at the edges. We cannot have open borders. You just can't let people come into the country at will. There has to be something in place. And our friends on the other side of the aisle have been all for that.
No.
I mean, you don't have to go that far back to hear Mr. Obama talk and Hillary Clinton talk about securing the borders and all that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden, we're getting beat over the head because we just don't have open borders and let everybody come in that decides that they want asylum. Another thing that I think is going to be important as we move into the election, and that is just the way I think the country views the two-party system, I think that's really people are beginning to look at that and say, there are some folks out there that are good people, they're good candidates, but they don't fit the mold of
Either
an R
party.
or a D.
Yeah.
And I'd be open to that. I think there are some people out there that would probably do the country, pretty well.
Well, you talk about a big mountain to climb.
It
Third
is.
party.
It is. It is. And it really hasn't worked. On our side, we had Ross Perot. He tanked.
How'd Teddy Roosevelt do with that?
Yeah.
The Bull Moose Party. Yeah.
Exactly.
George Nader tanked the Democrats.
George Nader. You could say even Bernie
How about,
Sanders.
how about Ralph Nader? George was an actor.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
Ralph Nader.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Ralph Nader. But I think the country might be looking at that. I really think that both parties have sort of left some people out of the tent. I
My
can't
goodness, yes.
I can't speak specifically, but I know that there are a lot of people that are Democrats that just don't believe the National Party platform. They don't believe in this abortion platform that they have. It's not the party of my grandfather or my father anymore. It is a totally different. They've taken it so far left, and I think that's going to damage our folks on the other side of the aisle because they've tacked so far left that I don't believe there's enough time to bring
Both
it back to
parties
the
have
center.
tacked to the.
To their extremes.
That started in the
Yes.
late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
It
So.
became, Ron, where are you on this topic?
Well, I don't know what is the most important thing to be discussed, but I have three issues that are dear to my heart that I would hope would get a hearing. A couple have already been mentioned. Global warming. I'd like to see a science-based discussion of this particularly brought out.
Yeah.
I think the administration is probably believing it because the most recent ploy is to squelch the reporting about it and the projections. And the way I understand it, they said let's cut this off at 2050. Well, most of the models show that the buildup of carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere by about 2050 is going to reach a critical point. It's going to boom. It's going to go up. Let's just ignore that. Let's just stop. So, we need a discussion about that. Another one that I want to see is again a rational discussion of gun control. And I'd like people say, well, we've got legislation in place to take care of this. And yeah, we do. There are some loopholes in this. There are some gaps in the reporting. I'd like to see that addressed and some way of taking care of this. I'd like to see a red flag situation where some states are bringing this in, where a person is showing some mental disability or showing some domestic violence. Take their gun away for a while. A red flag is issued there, and so far,
Isn't it awfully difficult to take legal action when there's no crime?
well, this is what we need because it's a palliative measure. It's a way of striking while before the iron gets that hot.
Let's just hope you don't have a neighbor that's upset with you.
Well, exactly. But again, there's legal recourse to this. It has to come before a judge before this to happen.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll be too late in some cases. But where it's being implemented, it's helping on the suicide rate. Because suicide can harm in way ways, but it's much more effective if you have a gun to do it. So some of these ways of getting guns out of the hands of folks who are unstable in some way is, I think, rather important. And the third part of that is I want to see a good teeth in gun storage. There's too many cases of little kids getting hold of guns that are improperly stored in the home.
Yeah.
Rather than go the way Ohio is going, where they're proposing to allow concealed carry without training and without a license. What's wrong with these people? This is ridiculous. What's wrong with these people?
Well, they came from a gun culture.
I guess so. And again, as Patty mentioned, it's the environmental issues, the EPA, and we need to really address what's happening with the air and water, and relate. This is really related to some of global warming because there's wildlife issues here and conservation issues here involved and wrapped up with this. So those are the three things in my mind that I would like to see stressed. I think they're very important. All these others, yeah, sure, trade, Immigration, obviously, all that stuff. Immigration is a worldwide problem. Look what's happening in Europe, what's happening in the latest EU. And the two-party system, that's interesting. Looks what happened just in Israel right now, it's parliamentary system. Now, you couldn't form a party. You're going to have another election.
I just saw that this morning. I was surprised.
So all these things all these things have have some importance, and I don't know what's the most important in this situation.
You mentioned one that I just now wrote down on my list because I hadn't even thought about it, but suicide is getting to be a horrible problem, particularly among veterans.
Yes.
And all. Maybe we ought to talk about that someday. Tom, what kind of a cockamamie?
I haven't heard that word for
That's
a
an
while.
introduction.
Really inspired.
You really like a neutral moderator, don't you?
Yeah, it's really
So
encouraging.
glad to have you here, Tom, really.
Poor guy.
Yeah. I was going to compliment you, but now At any rate, I approached it just a little differently. You said the number one, if there would be a number one, and I was intrigued with that, but that would imply some sort of criteria. So I said, okay, let's try to look at this whole list because you can make a case for every one of them. And so I tried that. The only criteria that seemed to be workable to single out was something, which one of these is irreversible? If we don't do something with it now, is there one of these that are irreversible? Interestingly enough, there's two that could be. One's global warming, and the other is immigration, because we must maintain a 2.1 birth rate. We are not doing that. We're teetering. That's irreversible. We can't catch that. That's based on pretty good documentation of what it takes to maintain a country. On the other hand, global warming, the statistics have been so convoluted and twisted and are just unreliable, except for some of the very basic one, and that these cycles do take place. We know that, and they even can conclude that they average about 150 years in their length. Global warming. That's been going on for 250,000 years. So there's a statistic that is scientific evidence, but it's about the only one that hasn't been twisted, that we have been really duped, I think, on the information around global warming. Now that's not true.
I'm easy to jump on top of you on that, but I won't.
Yeah, well, a lot of them would, but guess what? They're in business to make money. So you got to look at it right now. What the objectivity is and what's being twisted. But that's not true about immigration. You see, we have to do something as a country. Europe. There's not one country in Europe, when I looked at the last list, that was above 1.8. I mean, they're disintegrating. And so it's no wonder they want the Muslims in.
Do you think the wall is the answer?
No, it can't be. It never was. It hasn't been in history. So we have track record that's not a solution to anything. In fact, walls have been just the opposite. They've done just the opposite.
Well, they've been built to keep people in.
Or out. Either way, they don't work.
But
Look what the Nazis did with the wall in France. They went around it and then pinned. Anyway.
The reason I ask is because that's still the battle cry at the rallies for President Trump, and I just
Build the
wondered how
wall.
you felt about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm concluding there's the main one that we have to address and keep in the forefront in this election and many more is the population growth, and the most important issue right now is how we deal with immigration, because we can get our growth rate in place and maintained. So I agree too with there is a solution on immigration. We are too good at managing. We could solve that quickly with rational thinking and
putting politics aside.
putting it aside.
Do you
And that's
think
true
that's
of
going to
almost all of this. A gun, why not ration ammunition? Forget about the guns. Why not ration
Like,
ammunition?
That's the
like
big
meat
proposed.
tokens during the Depression.
You just,
Well, that's been proposed as
well,
far
sure.
as like the size of the
and
clips,
that would,
but it
would
keeps-
lead to everything else that
but
prohibitions
it's
do.
been turned down.
Yeah.
So.
So, you
Not
know,
gun control, but ammunition control.
But see,
Yeah, ammunition
here,
control.
herein lies the problem. When you look at it, we have an issue that I think most of us would agree upon, but when it comes to the solution, or we think we have a solution, the notion that we can compromise and come up with something in the middle that everybody can live with. I just go back to the abortion argument. I'm pretty much pro-life with the three exceptions, rape, incest, and the life of the mother. And people famously have said that abortion should be rare, safe, and what's that?
Bill Clinton said
Bill
that.
Clinton said that. And now the pendulum has gone so far that, when you have the governor of Virginia and people talking about that, if an infant is born
And you don't like it.
and you don't like it, that's still. I don't think we can as a country go along with that. And then the knee-jerk reaction are some of these bills that take those three exceptions out. And I
They're
can't.
trying to get to the Supreme Court. I think
Yeah.
they were written specifically
to-
so as to get that issue to the Supreme
yeah.
Court.
I think everybody would agree if the life of the mother or rape or incest, some of those situations take away the choice of the mother, the victim. But do we have to be so extreme? Do we have to go that far to say, well, it's your body, you're right, and whatever that clump of cells comes out until you decide if it lives or dies? I really don't think so. And some of these other issues we could probably come to some agreement on.
An
as
argument
far as,
on that recently that has some I think one can think about. My wife passed away recently, and I was approached by an organization that said, would you be willing to have her go for organ donation? Now, we had talked about that in the past, she and I, so I said, yeah. Now, the point is, if I had not given that permission, there is no way they would be legally allowed to do that. It's her body, it's her thought.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing, this argument said, with abortion. This is the woman's body. No government has a right to tell that woman what she can or cannot do. Now, there are all the moral arguments about pro-life and pro-choice, and the philosophical argument of when that blastocyte actually becomes a living human functioning being, whether or not it's just a clump of cells or whether it's actually a human being. That's sort of a philosophical argument there.
Which is why it has never been a topic with this
Never been a
panel.
topic,
I've
yeah.
never brought it up because there is no answer.
No, there's no answer to it, really. I mean, there's some. It hinges on a whole lot of your own background and so forth.
I know Tom's got a comment that he wants to make, and I hope you make it quick because I've
Yeah,
got
well,
two.
I think what's implied with almost all these topics is government reform. And so I'm just saying it's not in here as such, but if there is an issue, it is. And I think this is true, but in the Constitution's direction for Congress and how they should behave and govern themselves, the word consensus is used. And that's the last thing that is in place.
Agreed.
So that's
Yeah.
the starting point. What does that mean in terms of behavior of our government people, which would then look at what do you reform. So that's one of the points. The other one, an observation as we look at the two-party system. I think one of the drivers of that is this country is now bigger than it's ever been. There's more diversity than there's ever been. That would imply maybe the two-party system isn't represented, able to, because of this diversity that we now have in this country.
Okay, I was going to bring up two things, but we only got time for one. One of the things that we know for sure, because it's in every presidential campaign in my memory, is that the rich people need to pay their fair share of taxes. The implication is that they're not. And according to I guess it was the Census Bureau said, the top 2.5% of earners are paying 50% of all the taxes. My question is, how big should it be? What's fair? 60? 70? Or more?
Used to be 90, wasn't it, at one point?
I think the concern is that there are too many corporations that are making multi-million-dollar profits, that you have very, very wealthy billionaires that aren't paying a penny.
One of the things about, we have to be very careful about corporations, because much of our foundation of investments and retirements and everything else
That's where
are
it is.
in stocks of corporations. And
Yes.
so if they're not profitable, we have a whole problem with that.
Yeah,
end of things.
retirement is a
Yeah,
memory.
so it's a
Yeah,
catch-22.
people aren't getting retired. Yeah.
Okay, well, there's 40 seconds left, and I just wanted to say this. You know, we just had Memorial Day where we were reminded of 1 million Americans have died in wars since the founding of this country. And that for the most part, they are bright, strong, young people. Old politicians cannot come up with solutions, and young people die because of it. And now we're staring at Iran, and we're talking about amassing troops in the Mideast again. I think that this should be a topic to be properly aired during the campaign, is war.
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you very much, folks, and thank you, Tom, for visiting us again.
Yeah, my pleasure, even with the abuse.